This is NEGOTIATEx TV.
Hello, and welcome to the NEGOTIATEx podcast. My name is Nolan Martin. Joining me is Aram Denisian. And Aram, we have our first returning guest. Would you like to kick it off?
I will. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the NEGOTIATEx podcast, internationally renowned negotiation expert, speaker, advisor, and award-winning author, Keld Jensen. We first hosted Keld on the program last fall. We're excited to have him back to discuss his most recent book, The Elements of Negotiation, 103 Tactics for Everyone to Win in Each Deal. Folks, that is not 104. It is not 102. It is 103 tactics that you need to win in each deal. A former tech CEO, Keld advises governments and major corporations through his Smartnership Negotiation Organization. He is also an associated professor and has appeared in hundreds of international TV appearances, as well as a regular contributor to major business publications worldwide. In 2024, Keld was just recently ranked number 4 in the prestigious Global Gurus Top 30. Keld, we haven't had 1 through 3 on yet, so you're the highest ranking guru that we've had on the program. Thanks, Keld, for joining us again today.
Well, I'm honored. I just learned I was the first returning guest, so that's a great honor. Thank you for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being back.
And that's episode 75 for anybody that wants to go back and watch that episode first. Kicking this off, Keld, last time we discussed your Smartnership approach extensively. What motivated you to write The Elements of Negotiation, and how does it build upon or diverge from the ideas you presented in your previous work?
Great question. The last couple of books I wrote was a little bit more holistic about, high-level thinking, strategy choices, and less of a toolbox. So this time around, I felt there was a need to create a toolbox, give people some real tools how to create what I'm claiming that we need to do when we talk about strategies. So that was really the urge to write this one. And another thing is that, to be honest, and I might be offending somebody already, and the show is only 3 minutes old, but I think there are too many books that share opinions. And opinions can be great if they are rock solid and based on research and science. But it's really important that we are aware of what is opinions and what is fact. So I felt there was a need to bring out some tools and some content that is, has a solid background.
Nice. Keld, in my first class, talking about a toolbox, my first class that I teach each term, I bring in an actual toolbox and I pull out a hammer and I said, if this is the only tool that you have when it comes to negotiating, every problem becomes
I love that.
A nail.
I love that.
And then you might yell, and because we're gonna get into your toolbox, I start pulling out other tools, and I said, hey, listen.
Right.
Sometimes you need a pipe wrench to tighten up the pipe. Can't use a hammer on that. Trust me, I've tried. Okay, you can't do that. I'll pull out a paintbrush. Sometimes things just need that little, appearance touch up, right?
Right. I love that.
Listen, I'd love to get into the book a little bit. In the book, it's called The Elements of Negotiation. You emphasize the significance of nonverbal communication. How has your understanding of nonverbal cues evolved, and why is this where you decided to focus first in the new book?
Well, I haven't actually been talking about nonverbal communication and all of that for many years. I wrote my first book within that field actually back in 2009 and released another one in 2015 called Positive Impact that is all about nonverbal communication, because I've always been a strong believer in understanding communication as part of the route to become a great negotiator. And as I said, I haven't really touched upon that field for the last 10 years. So I thought we need to bring it in, because obviously that's an important tool. Back to a toolbox. It's an important tool. It's important to highlight that to every negotiator that, yes, we have economics and we have trust and we have relationship and we have tactics and strategies, but how you behave and how you're being interpreted non-verbally has a huge impact on how you negotiate as well. So, and another thing, just to take another step back, actually, when I started this whole thing back in 1998, I started for several years just preaching negotiation. And I had lots of students and clients leaving and go out there and failing miserably. And I was sitting there thinking, this is really weird because, I think the tools we're sharing are actually pretty good. So I dived in and figured out that a lot of them were actually failing on communication. So it wasn't because they didn't understand the content of negotiation, how to negotiate or create the tactics and the strategies, all that. They were just bad at communication. So understanding how to present, understand how to use visual aids, understand how to control and read body language, all of that is one of the pieces to the many pieces that is required to be a great negotiator.
You mentioned, obviously, the ways in which we can control and be aware of our own body language. How do I manage? You mentioned the interpretation of that.
Yeah.
How do I manage that as a tool?
That's a great question. I would say the first thing we need to understand is that it's really hard to change people, especially other people. The only individual we have a chance to make some changes to is ourselves, and that's actually really hard as well. Becoming better at communication and obviously body language and presenting and communicating is just like negotiation. I hate to say this, but it's not enough to buy and read my book or any other author's books. You have to practice. You have to take trainings. And while I have this opportunity, I just want to raise the flag that through studies, I'm very well connected to World Commerce and Contracting, and they're doing a lot of research together with me and on their own. And what we discover over and over again, and you may agree with that, is that a terrible, huge amount of professionals have never actually ever received formal training in negotiation. The last study I just saw a couple of weeks ago actually claimed that 55% of contract managers in North America have never ever participated in any formal training in negotiation. Wow. If that number is true, let's just say it's not true, it's only 30%, I'm still shocked. I didn't know what to say for hours when I heard that. And one recommendation I want to share with everybody is please listen to great podcasts like this one. Buy and read books, not only from me, but other established authors, and take trainings. It's not enough to read the book. Take the training, spend the 2-3 days that you need. And it's not enough doing it, once every 20 years. Well, I met a manager recently who said, yes, I do appreciate negotiation training is very important. I had great training 18 years ago, and I still remember parts of that training. And I was thinking, oh my God, because, it's something that you have to do over and over again. We actually have clients that do repeat training every year for the same group of people, simply because they know they need to be really, really sharp at what they do. And, we're human beings, we forget. And I'm pretty sure we're just watching the Olympics, right? I'm sure that every of those top athletes we saw there, they're not only practicing once every 18th year, they're practicing every bloody day to become best in the world, right? So it's practice, 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 practice.
Absolutely. And to kind of reiterate there on the practice is even recording yourself and watching it to become aware, to identify your own nonverbal cues is something that you can really do to hone your skills as a negotiator.
Oh, yes. I completely agree.
Is there a particular reason why you have body language as the first element?
I think it's very fundamental. Back to what I said earlier. You can practice negotiation skills all you want, but if your communication sucks, you're not going to be successful. So that was one of my reasons to put it in there. It's very hard to prioritize, to say which piece to the puzzle is the most important to become a great negotiator. I don't think I have the answer to that, but definitely nonverbal communication is an important one.
Moving on to chapter 2 there, I know it centers on the role of knowledge and understanding negotiation as an art and science. And in it, you have element 8, which is the crucial role of mathematics, which is scary for both Aram and I. Can you elaborate on the role mathematics plays in a negotiation?
Well, the fun part is it's scary to so many people, and a lot of people dislike the whole understanding of mathematics in negotiation. Okay, let me ask you guys a question. Why do two organizations negotiate with each other? Company A and Company B. They negotiate with each other to create and distribute value. End of story. That's the only reason two companies have ever negotiated with each other. How do you create and distribute value? We have to understand value. So understanding mathematics is really vital. I created the concept negoeconomics, that is just short for negotiation economics, that is basically identifying the asymmetric value between two parties. So, very easy, very quickly, talk about delivery cost. If your cost of delivery is 2%, my cost of delivery is 4%, obviously I shouldn't handle delivery because my cost of transportation is higher than yours. So we can figure out that negoeconomics, the asymmetric value, is the difference between your cost and my value or my cost. This is actually not rocket science, but we have to realize that in a commercial negotiation, not understanding the mathematics of the variables we are negotiating is a disaster. Now I have some good news, and that is the negotiator don't have to be a mathematical expert herself. He or she just need a controller in the room that they can throw the mathematic to and say, figure out whether this makes sense or it doesn't make sense. And what I'm telling every single of my clients is that you need a controller in your negotiation team. If you are not a mathematical genius yourself, and I'm not either, you need somebody who is and that can figure these numbers out. And, I had just to share a scary story with you guys. I was an advisor for a company in Europe a few months ago, and they want to go. I was an advisor sitting outside. I was not participating in the actual negotiation, just acting as a coach. And when they came out, they looked very happy. And I said, are you satisfied? Did you reach an agreement? They said, yes, we reached an agreement and signed the contract. And then I asked them, how do the financial looks like? And they said, we have no clue. We're going to do the calculations right now. And that is terrible. And I'm just emphasizing this real story because it happens a lot. People actually don't understand the mathematics behind what they're asking. For instance, let me give you another quick example. I'm just spending time with this because it's so crucial. I was with a procurement director recently, and he said, we're going out and we are demanding to extend the line of credit with all our suppliers. We're going from 30 days to 90 days. And I say, okay, that might be a great idea. What is the benefit to you of doing that? He said, I don't know. It just sounds nice, doesn't it? And I said, well, now you're a complete idiot. Because if your value of doing that is below the cost of the supplier, it makes no sense. It's an absolutely zero-sum negotiation where your benefit is just happening at the expense of the counterpart. And by the way, you could actually turn this around completely. Because if your cost of capital is 4% and the supplier's cost of capital is 9%, you actually have a wiggle room of 5% where you could actually propose to pay up front and get a discount of up to 5%, and the counterpart would accept that. So anyway, sorry about that long answer. It's just really important. Back to the important pieces to be a great negotiator. Understanding the concept of negoeconomics and mathematics is essential. So if you are in commercial negotiation, I'm a commercial negotiator. If you're in commercial negotiation, either you need to understand what's going on or you need a controller in the room. If you don't know that, please stay away. You shouldn't negotiate any commercial negotiation whatsoever.
Absolutely. And when we talk to even small companies, they always say, hey, I don't have any power talking to big companies. Well, thank goodness for the quarterly call reports where they can see the status of the company and what they're focused on. So if they need to, hey, identify that the company is strapped for cash or they're trying to just make improvements on certain aspects that's important to the CFO, they can identify that and they may be able to play to it.
I think what you were saying about mathematics and it's important helps prevent from a couple traps. One being missing total costs and just getting focused on price as a component of value and cost. The other thing is this idea that, we'll make it up on the next one. We'll make it up later. And if you haven't worked that out, that's probably not going to happen. You're probably going to find yourself wishing to make it up time and time again.
Right.
Keld, you also talk, element 9 is on negotiating in a foreign language. Why is this so important to corporate leaders? And what are the exact kind of breakdowns of this element that are important to know?
Yeah, that's a good one as well. I think when you live in the US, you have a tendency to think that the whole world speaks English, and a lot do. But you also have to remember that those of us, including myself, where English is the second language, we may sometimes struggle with the language, not because we're dumb, but because we have to handle another language as well, right? So when we are negotiating, it's really important to understand the culture. And I often say that in order to really understand the culture and how people are thinking, you need to have an insight into the language as well. You may not need to speak it fluently, but you need to understand, the terms and the ideas and how the language is built up. One thing you can do when you're studying culture and languages is just looking at difference between Britain and France. And that, when you dive into language, will actually give you some understanding of why they are negotiating so differently. And for instance, why the Brexit was a horrible negotiation, because the French negotiators were representing EU and the British negotiator was obviously representing Britain. And it was a culture clash right there, partly because of the language. So just back to your first question, why is communication chapter 1? language is such a huge thing as well. And I don't really want to stress anybody by giving them the understanding that this is just horrible, complicated. That's not really what I want to do. But there are so many things that we really need to think about in preparing a negotiation, and language is just one of those many things as well. And then I want to raise a flag as well and say, often when you are representing a smaller language, for instance, I'm a native Dane, dual citizen of both Denmark and the US, lived here for many years, but Danish is a small language. So there's a tendency that you think that, hey, nobody speaks Danish. So you as a negotiation team, in a break in the negotiation, you just sit there and convert in your own language, whether that is, Danish or whatever language it might be. And you don't think that the Americans sitting on the other side understand anybody speaking Danish, but perhaps they purposely brought somebody in the team who understand Danish, and perhaps they're not telling you they have that individual sitting there and just picking up any information. So, there's so many small items that is important to address regarding language as well.
Yeah, and I feel like going back to what you were saying about nonverbals earlier, this is where I can get myself into a lot of trouble if I'm not aware, not just of the language and the culture, and
right,
but the nonverbals. And what am I unintentionally communicating that is very American or Western, but maybe detrimental in this instance? You ever found that? You ever found any examples of just kind of unconscious actions showing up and derailing the negotiation?
Oh, I mean, yes, I'm doing quite a lot of work in the Middle East. I know we talked about earlier, Nolan, you've been to the Middle East, there are different behaviors there. We have in our team, we have one of our partners is a woman. She was offended last year because, we met with an Arab and he didn't want to shake her hand. And I said, don't take it personally. It's nothing to do with you. It's just a culture thing. And again, back to what you just said, we have to be careful not just trying to adapt our culture on the whole world, because the world is global and it's probably smaller than ever, but still there are tremendous, huge differences that we need to understand and respect, by the way, because I'm not saying we're necessarily right and everybody else is wrong. So we just have to understand those small cues and how we interpret that. And the counterpart may not be aware of our special cues and behaviors. So, just dress, in general, Americans, and I'm generalizing, to have a tendency to dress down or be more relaxed business-wise than a lot of international counterparts. So if you show up in a t-shirt and you're meeting a Japanese counterpart that is sitting in a perfect suit with a white shirt and a dark tie, that's create a weird balance already there.
I'd love to ask you about the importance of learning, education, and training, and how this you differentiate between those three elements.
That's a great question. I would pack it this way. I meet quite a lot during a year of unconsciously incompetent negotiators. So they're negotiating, they're doing it a lot, and they've been doing it for many years, but they don't know what they don't know. The first thing you need to do is move them from that unconsciously incompetent into being consciously incompetent, which is actually horrible, because suddenly you realize from one day to the other that what I thought I was good at, I'm not. And then you can slowly build them up again to move them into being conscious competence. And then finally, if you really want to reach that expert level, you have to be unconsciously competent, right? So that's a trip. That is not happening overnight. That is an effort, that is a process, that is an investment, and it's a choice. So when we talk about learning versus training, back to what we discussed earlier, the training part is really where you, as you said, for instance, with communication, record yourself. A wonderful advice. Look at yourself. Do I really look like that? It can't be me. I'm not that overweight. That's not my voice, is it? Yes, it is. It's all you. So you have to realize that. And the same thing goes with negotiation. Now, one thing I've learned, and I'm sure you guys are doing the same, but I've been training so many people, and I can stand up there and lecture for hours and hours and hours, and everybody sit there and nod and disagree or agree or whatever. And then I throw them into a simulation that we record, so they're sitting negotiating with each other, a simulation prepared for them. Then we do some editing, and then we show them the highlights of that negotiation. And that's when they actually learn. That is the realization, oh, that didn't work. That is what I'm supposed to do. That is what I'm not supposed to do. So having people doing it themselves and then getting feedback is the real thing where we move them from being unconsciously incompetent. So they have to burn their fingers, so to speak. That's essential.
One of your elements is the use of AI in your negotiations, and you've done a lot of work on this. You didn't put it in the chapter with tools. I'm curious, two-part question, Keld. First of all, since we had you on last, where's your thinking gone with the use of AI in negotiations? Part two is you didn't put it in with other tools. Why was that?
Yeah, the first one is I am a huge optimist and big fan of AI. I think AI in many cases can perform and conduct negotiations better than us as human beings. Is AI going to replace us as negotiators? That I do not know. I think that AI is a wonderful tool, just like a spreadsheet or calculator or notebook or a phone. It's a tool that we should embrace and acknowledge and use. I use AI every single day for every negotiation I'm involved in. And I use it mainly to break down data because, as human beings, we can't cope with huge amount of data and AI can. I don't know. I don't remember whether we talked about it last time, but since last time, we have released a peer-reviewed research paper where we studied the use of ChatGPT, and very quickly, what we did is that we had global teams, lots of teams negotiating with each other, and we compared 3 different negotiations. One negotiation where both teams not were using any kind of AI tool. One negotiation where one side were using AI and the counterpart were not. And the third negotiation where both sides were using AI. We gave them a simulation. They had time to prepare and then conduct their negotiation. And the conclusion based on all these repeated simulation was amazing. I was actually shocked about the difference. The negotiation where both teams were using AI actively and knew how to use it were superior to both of the other negotiations. They were done way before time, where all the other negotiations ran out of time, couldn't reach an agreement. They captured and utilized all the value that we talked about a few minutes ago. And the third thing that was a conclusion, which actually surprised me a lot, was that the transparency and honesty went through the roof when both of them were using AI.
Wow.
And don't ask me why, because I'm not sure I actually know that. So it was really fascinating to see the difference between the 3 negotiations, the one utilizing AI and the other 2 where only one side were using it and none were using it. So it was fascinating.
Yeah, that really surprises me. What you said, and that the transparency was greater. So was the relationship enhanced as well? Did you see that as a byproduct of them using AI? And
I don't necessarily think so. It was the relationship. I think people were better prepared, and that made them more relaxed. They understood their numbers, back to understanding mathematics, because AI can help you with that. So they were simply more relaxed, understood the variables, understood the consequences of the calculations, and thereby became a lot more relaxed. Because I often see that when people are not properly prepared, which happens to a lot of negotiators, they become more hesitant to share information because they're nervous about what will happen if I share that information. But if you are confident in your own position and knowing what you got and the consequences of moving a variable, what we saw in these negotiations was that people in general, and we repeated the study over and over again, so we just saw people were just way more relaxed and confident about the whole thing. So, what the really brilliant teams did is they took the simulation I wrote, they uploaded it to ChatGPT and just asked ChatGPT, could you just break this down for us? What questions should we ask the counterpart? What is the starting position? What questions should we ask? What would be their interest? Where can we create value? And, it was just amazing what ChatGPT could generate. Now, the great thing, as I think we all know by today, is that when you use AI, you have to tell AI to act in a certain role. And what you can do if you want to, you can ask ChatGPT to act like me. So you can say, be Keld Jensen, you understand the world of partnership and economics, so negotiate like he would do. And then you get the whole approach into economics and partnership and transparency and trust and all of that. So long answer to your question, I apologize. Big fan of AI. However, I want to raise a warning here, and that is it's not a shortcut, meaning that if you are an unskilled, uneducated, unexperienced negotiator, AI is not a shortcut because AI is not right all the time. So you have to be able to filter what is right and wrong. Now, if you are a skilled, experienced, educated negotiator and not using AI today, please start immediately because you're already way behind. So that's my absolutely conclusion on that.
Well, that answers my question too, in terms of why it's not a tool and why you put it in the chapter on knowledge. Makes complete sense. Thanks, Keld.
Emotions can significantly influence negotiation outcomes. How does your new book address the balance between emotion and strategy, and why is this balance more critical now than ever?
I normally say that all business is human. And what I mean by that is that it's you and I, Nolan, that are negotiating. It's not two companies negotiating. And we love to think in this world that company A are negotiating with company B. And we read in Financial Times or Washington Post that these two companies made an agreement. I think that's a load of BS. I apologize for my language, because it was Maria that negotiated with Brandon. That was what happened. And that is what happened every single time. And if Maria can't agree with Brandon, but Brandon is replaced by Peter, perhaps they reach an agreement. That shows over and over again that is the case. So, and what is it that controls you and I as human beings? That is emotions. I know we all try to claim that we're very rational, but we are not. We are irrational. Every single study on earth document that we are irrational. Daniel Kahneman even won the Nobel Prize in economics by suggesting that we are irrational. So we are irrational. We are irrational when we step into negotiation. Our relationship with the counterpart, whether we like them or trust them, has a significant impact on how our negotiation goes. So we need to understand our own emotions. We need to understand the counterpart. And let me ask you this question. I guess we all try to sit in a negotiation, right, where we get offended or annoyed or stressed or happy or whatever kind of emotion. And I'm always asking my clients this question. All of them say, yes, of course I get all these emotions. Great. Well, there you go. It is an emotional process. So back to all the pieces to the puzzle, the 103 elements that we have created here. Emotion, just like communication or mathematics or preparation, all that is important pieces to create that perfect puzzle where we have everything included.
Hey everyone, Nolan here to jump in and end today's podcast for part A of the show. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the NEGOTIATEx podcast if you haven't already. And also join us next week for part B of this awesome interview. Hey, thanks for checking out this video on NEGOTIATEx TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you and your small business, your team are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to negotiatex.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over in the next video.